We're going to address an issue that I've been wanting to do for quite some time, and it's this window. We're going to trim it all out. I'm going to show you how to do it, all coming up next. Well, welcome back to the shop. My name is Brett, and once again, I'm glad you have tuned in. Well, like I said, there are some projects around here in the shop that really need my attention, and these are some of these little things that I just have not had time to do here. And one of those is this window in my paint booth. You've heard me talk about it in the past, about the amount of light that comes through. And one of the ways you can see, I've hung up an old bed sheet here just to kind of use it as a diffuser. A lot of times too, I'll wait for a cloudy day or when it's raining out to come in here and do work in the paint booth. I shouldn't have to do that in a nice paint booth like this. So all that needs to happen here to correct this is I never did finish the window trim in here, and I kind of thought maybe we'd take an episode here and I'd walk you through some of the steps. Now, some of you that are seasoned woodworkers, finished carpenters, of course, this is not going to be anything new to you. Hopefully you'll enjoy watching me trim this out and how of course I do it. Some of you young folks may benefit from this as to how to properly trim out a window. So I'm going to take you through the steps. We're going to build a window stool, and I think I'm going to double it up, make a thick one. I'll take you through the steps of that. We'll make our side extensions, and we'll just go through and trim this all out. And then what I'm going to do to control the sunlight, I was walking through Lowe's, I think a few years ago, and I just happened to come across a couple of roll-up blinds that they had on clearance. And believe it or not, they had them for $7 a piece. There were two. I bought them both. And I think I have to cut them. I haven't looked at it, but we'll figure that out when we get to that point. But let's go ahead and take this window, take everything off, and let's go ahead and I'm going to walk you through how to trim out a window. So I did pull out some wood here this morning from my lumber rack. I found a piece of poplar, 4/4 poplar. And then I found a piece of pine also that I think we can use for our jamb extensions, our window extensions. So we'll go through all of that as well. So let's head out to the shop and let's get started. Okay, here are the two boards that I have pulled down to trim out our window. I've got a nice poplar board here that's a 4/4 board that we're going to use for our window stool. And then we've got a pine board here that, to be honest with you, I don't know where it came from. I pulled it down from the very top part of my lumber rack up there. I must have had a plan for it at some point, never used it, so it'll be perfect to make the window extensions all the way around the window. So first thing though we want to do, I want to build the stool for the window, and we're going to go ahead, I want to make it a little bit, we're going to go a little bit fancy because again, what I'm going to show you can translate or transfer over to any window in your home or in your garage to build a window stool. So we're going to go ahead and double this up. We're going to round over the top and bottom part of our window stool, and then up underneath we're going to add, or the second layer, we're going to add like an OG edge. So it's going to be a little bit fancy. Then we can go ahead and clamp that up and set that aside to dry. And then we can go on and then we'll start cleaning that window up and get everything prepped and ready to go. First thing though we want to do, we'll cut it to size and we'll get everything planed. So I've already kind of measured the window in there. That window's 6 foot in that shop, so it's 6 foot long. So I want to go a little bit longer, so I'm going to cut this at 80 inches. And then we should be able to go over and start planing. Okay, board's cut the length. Now, one thing I noticed here before we head over to the planer is this board has a little bit of a cup to it. And I think the best way to take care of that is let's run it through the table saw. Let's just go ahead and cut this board right in half. It is it's 8 3/4 inches wide, so that'll be just about right because our window, we're gonna finish our window out at somewhere around 4 1/4. So we'll just go ahead and slice this right in half. That way we can save as much material when we run it through the planer. If we run it through when it's cupped like that, then we're going to take off a lot more material. So let's go ahead, we'll slice this in half and we'll head to the planer. All right, so our board is 8 3/4, so half of that is what, 4 3/8. Good. Set the height. We can run it through. Now we'll go plane it. Okay, our 2 poplar halves are planed on both sides, so that part is done. Let's go ahead and we'll set this pine board aside. So we're not going to use it right now. We're just going to focus on the window stool for now. Good. So our 2 pieces here are 80 inches long, which is a lot longer than what we need. So let's go back into the paint booth here. Let's go ahead and take down the old bed sheet and open that up. Let's get some measurements, and I'll take you through that, how to measure for the window stool, because it's really critical that we get this part right. Once we get that right, everything just kind of falls into place. So let's go into the paint booth. Get rid of this bed sheet. And then what I used here when I first installed this window, I wanted to keep a lot of the overspray off the window itself. So I just put up a cheap shower curtain. So that's all this is. So it's been up for a few years now and it's ready to come down. So we're just going to go ahead and pull this down, throw it away and get rid of it. And then we'll get everything else prepped. But for now, again, I want to work on the stool, so we're just going to get some quick measurements, and then we can get that all put together, get it glued up, then we come in here and get the window prepped. So let's go ahead and we'll just pull this out of the way for now. Okay, so we want to measure for our window stool. So this window happens to have a piece of trim nailed all the way around that's holding some of the components of the window together in there. So it leaves a really nice seam here. So I want the top part of my window stool to come right to the top part of this seam. So that is going to be an inch and a quarter. And then as far as the depth goes, to our drywall, we're 2 5/8. So I want to go out beyond that. We want to figure in for the bottom part up underneath, the second part of our window stool. And if we go 4 inches, that'll leave a nice reveal underneath the window stool, and then we'll have enough room there too for our apron. Now, as far as the trim goes, we need to measure and take all of that into account here. So again, we are about, I don't know, 1 7/8, 1 3/4, roughly around there. Our window trim is somewhere around 2 1/4. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this because I think we're going to be just right on the edge right here somewhere. So I want this window stool to kind of extend out. So when we drop this trim, when we finish this trim up, it's sitting nice on our window stool, and then we have just a little bit extra on the side. If I go a little bit long, we can always trim it back. So if we just kind of go by that line, and I think if we add, let's say 2 inches, I think that's going to be more than what we need. So our window's 6 foot, 72 inches, so we're going to add 4 inches, 76 inches. So let's go out, we'll cut our poplar boards to 76 inches. Okay, 76. Okay, I grabbed my handheld router because there's already I think that's a 1/4 inch round over bit that's installed on that. I also went over to my joiner and joined both edges here on our window stool. The other side is still rough, but we'll go ahead and we'll get that trimmed when we go to install everything. So the first thing though I want to do is I want to knock off the edge on the top and the bottom that's going to be the top part of our window stool. We're going to do this in 2 parts. So we'll knock the edge off with that. We'll just do a nice round over. And then on the bottom side, I'm going to switch the bit out. And I'm going to put an OG edge on here. And we're going to add just a nice little detail up underneath there. Again, this is way overkill, especially in the paint booth. But I kind of do want to walk you through how to do the window, how to install a window stool. You know, you can make your own, just show you how easy it is and trim the entire window out. So we're gonna go and make this a little bit fancier. But the first thing we wanna do is just knock these edges off on the 3 sides, top and bottom, and then we'll go fit it into our window. Good. There we go. We've got both sides routed. On the bottom, I added just a little bit of a thumbnail edge there because I think when I go ahead and route this second piece with the OG edge, that'll kind of match up nicely and it'll just give it a nice little detail. So let me go ahead and change the router bit out. We'll put this bit in and then we'll do the other side. Good, that looks good. Now I think I'm deciding here, I'm going to kind of keep changing things as I go along here, but I think I'm going to run this through the planer one more time. I'm about 1 inch on the thickness here. Remember, our window stool is going to be somewhere around 1 1/4 inches is where we're going to finish this off. And once I go in there and we start fitting this window stool to the rough opening, we're going to cut and do some cutting and everything to get it down to our 1 1/4 inches, and I'll show you again how to do that. But I think just taking a little bit off, maybe like 1/4 inch off, is going to help. I don't think we need to be that thick. So let me run that through the planer and then we can come back and then we'll put this together and then we can go in and kind of fit it to the window. There we go. I took a minute and cleaned off the bench and got this all done. I went ahead and made 2 passes with the planer. So now I'm down to, it's around 3/4 inch thick. So that's going to work out really well. And I'm just lining it up here with my thumbnail and just taking a look to see how that's going to look. And you know, that's going to look really nice. I may even set that back just a little bit more. But when I get this all glued down and it's all ready to go, I'll show you what it looks like. And then we'll go in and we'll get it installed. But first I need to go ahead and get this clamped, get it glued, let it set up for a few hours. And in the meantime, we'll go into the paint booth. We can go ahead and take the old shower curtain down, get that window all prepped. There's some work there and clean up what we've got to do before we even do any of that. So let me get this glued down and then we'll head into the paint booth. Well, it's a new day here in the shop and I'm starting off here getting this window prepped. I didn't get a chance to do that yesterday. I ended up quitting early because I had to take my little Jack Russell to the vet. He had a doctor's appointment, so just a routine checkup. So I had to run, and I had a couple of other errands to run. So I figured I've already got the window stool all glued up and clamped. So that's where I kind of left it yesterday. So today I want to go ahead and get all the cobwebs, get this all cleaned up. I brought my shop vac in, and we'll get this all cleaned, and then we can bring the window stool in, and we can start making our measurements, getting our layout, and we'll see if we can get that cut in. Our window's all prepped and ready to go. And here is our window seal. So I figured we can come in here, and I'm going to lay out my center line on here and then mark the center on my window. And we get this all lined up, and then we can just make a couple of marks here, and we'll work at fitting this window stool down. This is the hardest part, of course, on trimming out a window, is just getting this window stool down. The rest of it goes pretty quick. So there's our center line for our window stool, and I know this window's 6 foot. We're just a little bit with our rough opening. You know, we're right at 6 foot, or six foot and 1/8. So we want to go ahead and mark our center here. So I'm just going to mark 36. There we go. Now we'll grab our window stool, and all we're going to do is mark up here basically where this is going to sit. And I'm just going to kind of eyeball it here. I'm not getting too carried away. If this were for a customer, if I were actually doing this in a house, then that would be different. But this is my paint booth. I don't mind if we're off a little bit here and there. Okay, now we'll take this out to our bench, and I'll get some more measurements. We'll get this all laid out on the bench, and then we'll grab the jigsaw, cut it out, and then we can come in and check the fit. All right, so I took a few minutes here and laid out what we want to cut, and I'll show you here what's going on. So we've gone ahead and we've marked our center line on our window stool here. So we already have those measurements because we marked on either side of the rough opening, which is indicated right here. So all I did is went in and measured from the window to the drywall, and my dotted line here represents my drywall, and we're 2 3/4 inches, so that ought to work. So all I simply did is just came in 2 3/4 and then just kind of come over here with my square and squared it off. One little tip though, when you're doing this, is make sure you kind of X out the part that you're going to lose. This is the waste material, so that's considered waste. So yeah, so I don't mind admitting there's no ego on this side of the camera that, you know, I've made mistakes and I've cut those things wrong different times back when I was doing finished work. And it's real easy to do when you're just kind of rolling along and your head's just really not in the game, and you just grab the jigsaw and start cutting. So it happens, but I always like to kind of mark my waste and what I'm going to be cutting out. So that's just a little tip for you out there. So let's go ahead, we'll get our jigsaw, we'll cut that out, we'll go back in then, and we'll fit it and see how we did. right, let's see how we did here. That fits pretty good on a rough opening, but interestingly enough here, we've got a gap in the center of our window stool. It's about 3/16, almost 1/4 of an inch, but it's a heavy 3/16 right in the center. And then we touch down on either end of our window stool here. And the other thing I don't like is we have a little bit of a space here between the drywall and our window stool. So I want to close that up as well. This side's not bad, but we'll go ahead and we'll close that up. And I think the way we're going to do this, since we have a gap here, is I'm just going to grab my compass and I'm just going to scribe this line right along here. And then we can get our hand plane out and we'll just plane it down, work it down on either end and come in, and we'll just continually just take a little bit off and fit it until we get it, where we want it. And that'll close this gap up here too on the end. So this is the stuff though I love. I love when you get into, finished carpentry, and that's why I really enjoyed finished carpentry back in the day when I was doing it, because I like being a little bit meticulous and just taking my time and working a problem, until we get it right. So I know this isn't a real big deal, but it's fun for me because this is just something different that I get to do here in the shop. So yeah, let me grab my compass and then we'll mark this line. Okay, we'll go ahead and get this set. And we just scribe a line. And we'll just go ahead and kind of freehand the end here. My compass doesn't want to fit up against there because of that set screw, but we'll be close. There we go. Okay, now that we have our line scribed, just a matter of taking our hand plane now. We'll get set up on the bench and we'll just start working this down to the line. We'll come in and we'll check our fit, and we'll just keep working it until we get it right. So as I'm cleaning up and getting ready to hand plane our window stool here, I got to thinking, before I do that, I need to create a wide or a really long or deep rabbet on the bottom side of our window stool here. And if I go ahead and I plane this all down and we kind of create like a crown, it's going to be hard for me to run this through the table saw and fit this to the bottom part of our rough opening. So this piece here, our window stool overall is about 1 5/8 inches. So we need to take down about a 3/8 of an inch or so, 1/4 of an inch, maybe we'll start. The rough opening again is 2 3/4 inches deep. That goes right up to the edge of our window. We want to be somewhere around 1.5 inches as far as the thickness goes. We can drop that down. So if we just go over to the table saw, we can kind of set it all up and we can just plow out, and we should be able to create a nice long rabbet here, and then we can go back in and fit it and make sure that we're dropped down tight enough, and then we can come back here and we'll start planing it. And that should be about the last step as far as fitting this to our window. So let's head over to the table saw and let's go ahead and take about a 1/4 of an inch or 3/8 off. All right, first thing we want to do is set the height of our blade here. And I picked this little gizmo up a number of years ago, back when I was doing cabinetry and kitchens and things. This makes it really, really nice to set the height of your table saw blade. So it has all the different markings on it, and I suppose you can still get it today, but it's just a nice little thing. I just keep it right there, never lost it. So here's 3/8 of an inch right here. So we can just go ahead and we'll set our height. There we go. Now we need to set our fence. So if we set it somewhere around 2 3/4, we should be good. And let's go ahead and let's see how we do. There's our first cut. Now let's go ahead, we'll flip it around. Let's set the height now to wherever our blade intersects that cut, which should be right about there. Good. And then we'll set our fence at 3/8 of an inch, and then we can make another cut. And there we go. Now we'll go in and let's fit it, and we'll see how we did. All right, let's see how we did here. So we still have, of course, our gap right here in the center, but we're starting to look a little bit better down here. Now we've got a gap at our extension, or where we've, kind of overshot our rough opening there. So, but we're going to close that up because we can go ahead now and start hand planing our line, and we'll start slowly working this this little bit of a gap out. So let's go ahead and let's start planing. how it looks now. I think that's as close as I'm going to get it, especially for a paint booth. My end down here is touching the drywall, and I'm touching down here. And I think some of this, I can put a little bit of pressure when I go to nail it down permanently, that, you know, if I wanted to, I could do a little bit of caulking, and I may do that, just a little bit of caulk. And as for our height, we're just below our seam here, and that's what we were shooting for. So I'm happy with it right now. Again, we're just a little bit off on the seam on our height because of this old window in here. It has a little bit of a bow, and you know, it's just out of whack a little bit, but that doesn't bother me at all. So I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna grab my nail gun. We'll get this nailed down permanently, then we can move on to our extensions. So one area I need to address first before we start making our extensions is right up on top here where I put my header. When I installed this window, I never finished putting something up in there as far as a nailer. So I had a little bit of this, or I had this 2x2 left over when I was building the crate for the horse for Nevada. And I think that'll fit right up in here. Yep, so I'm just going to put a little bit of liquid nail on it and put it up in there, and it's not, of course, doing anything structurally, so I think that'll work just fine. And then I'll just put a couple of screws, a couple of drywall screws in just to hold it in place. Just gives me something a little bit more to nail to when we go to put our trim on. Let's see if I can do this without making a giant mess. There we go. There we go. I just needed something to get a hold of that 2x2 so I can slide it over and put it on my studs over here. So I started putting some furring strips up in here to build this down a little bit. My battery died, so you kind of missed that, but you didn't miss much. But I did notice when I was adding another strip up here is that my opening is a bit crooked. I'm about an inch and 5/8 there, and I dropped down to about 1 1/4 inches. and I'm not sure what's going on. So I put my level up here and my window is dead on. So it's perfect inside this rough opening. So something, maybe the header somewhere in there is off just a little bit. So I think what I'm going to do now, instead of trying to mess around with adding more strips and working that out, let's go ahead and let's cut our window extensions first. And I'm going to put my top one in first. I always do that because then I can bring my side ones up, and that's going to hold that top one in place. But let's go ahead, we're going to cut this one a little bit tight, and I'm going to go ahead and fit it in here, and then we can measure the distance, and then we can just kind of cut and add in what we need and nail it up. I think that's the best way to handle this. That looks good. Looks like 3/4. And about 5/8. So we need some pieces, 3/4 and about 5/8. Looks good. That looks good too. There we go, that works. Now we'll do our sides, and then we can go ahead and work our trim. about 57 1/4 high. So I've gone ahead and I'm just kind of going around the shop pulling scrap out that I had. Again, I had a couple of pieces of poplar that I'm just using as a bit of a shim here, just to bump this out a little bit. Put our last piece up. And that finishes off the extensions. There's really nothing to that other than just kind of shimming them out if you need to and just work your way around, and that's all there is to it. So let's go ahead, we'll measure for our trim. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to give this about 1/8 of an inch reveal. So I'm going to step my window trim back and just leave about 1/8 of an inch show there. So I'm just going to go up to about 57 1/8, and I'll make my first cut. This should do it. Yeah, that looks better. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip here, and this is the way I trim when I trim windows and doors out, or I used to, is I'm just going to put a couple of nails right at the top. I'm not going to nail this down tight, because I'm going to work my way around. And actually, I'm going to do this side, I'm going to do that side, and then I'm going to miter the top. I'm going to show you another way that you can miter your corners and get them exact so that you don't have to measure or anything like that. So let's go ahead, we'll get this tacked up. That looks pretty good. Let's go ahead and nail that up. My wife and I ran in here this afternoon to pick up a little bit of trim. When was the last time you all bought window and door trim? My goodness. These 4 pieces were $50. I couldn't believe it. It's been a while since I've had to buy trim, but I wasn't expecting that. Woo! All right, let's get in position here. So I've just mitered one end of our top piece of trim. So what I want to do is we're going to roll this around, and I'm going to put it right up on top. And that looks good, and then we can mark the other side, and that's where our miter is going to be. That looks good. let's go ahead. We'll put a little bit of glue on here and we'll nail it down. But this is a perfect example of why I only nail, I put a couple of nails on the top part of my first piece of window trim. And that's so I can move this around a little bit to get my miter exactly where I want it. And then when I have it, put a couple of nails through the top and on the side, and then we can just kind of stitch it up all the way around and we're good to go. Looks good. A little glue and then we'll nail it home. And that looks pretty good. Let me finish nailing this up and then last piece we need to do is the apron underneath there. We'll get that cut and this is ready for paint. All right, so there's our apron, and what I did is I cut on either end. I only cut it at a 10-degree angle. Now typically if you were doing this for a customer or anything, I would go back and I would cut a return on this. I would do a 45 and then add another small piece on here, glue it on, and it just makes a really nice transition when you go to look at it. But I'm going to show you another little easy way that you can kind of get the same effect. So what I'm going to do is just take a file and I'm just going to file at every point here where there is a shadow line or a line in this molding, and I'm just going to file it back and just kind of make a groove down here, and then when it's painted it'll look pretty good. It'll look like it was somewhat mitered. Of course we know it's not. And that's kind of how that looks. Now, would I do this for a paying customer? Absolutely not. But for my paint booth and what I'm doing, it's just fine. And that'll look, this is probably more than what I need to do. There we go. That looks pretty good. At least I'm happy with it. I'll clean it off and I'll start putting some primer on it. I'm just going to paint it white because it's going to get pretty well messed up anyways. And then when that dries, then we can come in and we can put our blind up and we'll see how that works. Well, as you can see, it's been a few days and I have the window all painted and it's pretty well finished. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. But is it good enough for, where it's at and who it's for? You better believe it. I'm thrilled to have this done. This has been something I've been wanting to do for a few years, and just one of those things I've got to force myself to kind of do it. So it need it done, and I'm real happy with the way it looks. And I hope watching me do this, and this video was really geared more towards our younger generation out there, but really anybody that kind of wants to understand how to trim a window out and make the extensions, then the window seal and everything else, or the window stool. Of course, the window stool, I took the long way to do it. You didn't have to do it that way. You could just put a board, plain a board, or just get a board and put it down and put your apron up underneath there. Nothing wrong with that. But I just kind of wanted to show you kind of the a way that you can do it and make it just a little bit nicer. But the blind, I didn't videotape that because once I started reading the instructions, it took about 5 minutes to put it up. There was nothing to it. It's a 6-foot blind. All there were 2 brackets on either side. And I just, evenly spaced them, and just really that blind just popped right in. It was so easy. I wasn't sure if we could cut it, and I was kind of hoping it could fit inside the window well, but it doesn't. It just doesn't. This type of blind doesn't allow for that. So I'm happy with just putting it up above. It was real easy to do. And then I wasn't sure, once I closed the blind, I noticed that I'm still getting quite a bit of light in, and it definitely helps. It's going to help with the glare. But I wasn't sure. Again, I got to thinking about what else I could do. I always put a shower curtain over the window just to protect for overspray, protect the glass. And I thought, well, why don't I just put a gray shower curtain up. They're cheap enough. This was only like $3 at Walmart. And I'm going to try that out and see how that works. So I ended up putting 2 up. So that gives me the option of when the blind's down that I can pull this over. But if it's a little bit cloudy, or if I just want to, there's enough light, then I can just pull my clear one over and that'll protect the window. So we're going to give that a shot and see how that goes. As far as lowering the blind, again, real simple. It fits in, just so happens it fits in this window just absolutely perfect. It was almost made for this window. So you can't ask for anything better than that. So as far as the profile, I'll show you what the profile of my window stool ended up looking like. I have a piece of scrap that I saved, so you can kind of get a really good idea of what it looks like down. But overall, window opens and closes, of course, beautifully. Need to go ahead and clean it. But yeah, I'm really happy to have this done. I've got a little bit of bleeding on my trim, but again, it's the paint booth and it's good enough for in here. So now I'm going to go ahead out, and I named this video Woodworking, Windows, and Weight Loss for a reason. And we've got the woodworking part done, we've got the window part done, so let's go out to the bench. I've got a lot to clean up out there, so I'll see you out at the bench. So I wanted to share with you what my wife said too when she went in and she saw the window all finished and what I had done in there. She said, see, you can finish something. So thanks, dear. I really appreciate that one. Made me laugh. But anyways, woodworking, windows, and weight loss. So I'm going to try to make this little story as brief as I can. I don't want to hopefully bore you all and drone on. But I've been going on a little bit of a weight loss journey here over the last few years. Growing up, I've always been pretty much on the thin side. It wasn't until probably my late 30s, 40s, as we get older, things start to slow down, and that seemed to be the case with me, and put the weight on and everything. And I've been really working and trying to figure out, I want to get this, get weight back off and start feeling good. And it was really after the big I guess, pandemic that we went through worldwide, that my wife and I really got serious about it. And I actually, and I don't mind talking about this at all. In fact, I'm hoping this might be an incentive out there for some of you. You know, I'm going to be 57 next month. You know, it's never too late to start. And so anyway, so I actually went through classes. I was contemplating doing surgery. Went through the whole thing, and then what stopped me from that was once we had the classes done, they were scheduling surgery and all that good stuff. And they said, so this is what to expect after, is that you won't be able to pick anything up heavier than a gallon of milk for about 6 weeks. Well, obviously that's not going to work for me. I knew there'd be a little bit of downtime, but I wasn't expecting that. So that kind of just, you know, scratched that entire idea. And it was about a year later, I came across a doctor in Pittsburgh that is holistic, and his approach to weight loss is he wants to do blood work. He wants to see what's going on in your body. He wants to see hormones and everything. He does really, really extensive blood work. And to me, it just clicked. It just made sense that, you know, that was a really cool way of you know, looking at weight loss and helping. And so my wife and I did the blood work. We went down a few weeks later for the consultation, and he actually handed us a 3-ring binder of our blood work, and he spent quite a while with us going over everything. And then he put a whole plan together, and it's just, you know, eating healthy, and so they start teaching you how to eat healthy and everything. If you're interested, it's called Body by AIM, and you can look that up. They are, of course, I'm not sponsored or anything like that. It's just that, you know, I was looking for something that worked. Let me tell you something. Boy, did this work. I probably in about 6 months, the first month with 30 days was like really clean eating, learning how to eat and everything. And then the second was more of like a paleo. And anyways, like I said, to make a long story short, I don't want to bore you all, but I dropped about 60 pounds, 50 pounds, somewhere around there in 2 months. And I was pretty much going through, and I was about 6-7 months in, and I dropped over 100 pounds. So I got down. My heaviest, I was at 375, and I was in almost a 52 waist in a pants, and I was heading to a 4X shirt. Something I needed to really change something. So my lightest, where I was at the end of the 6-7 months, I got down to 275. And let me tell you, I was in a 40 waist, which, I mean, I haven't been in that in I don't know how long, and feeling great. And then when I was working on those 2 giant horses that went out east, that's when things kind of went south, because I hurt my back lifting those things, you know, constantly. And so I was having some real problems. And so then, of course, you get out of your routine and you stop eating correctly and everything else, and then I put weight back on. So I actually contacted them again here just last month, and they were happy to hear from me. And of course, I was happy to hear from them, and they decided they're going to do like a reboot program for some of us that kind of needed a little bit of help again. So I'm happy to announce that I'm back into it, and I've been at it for about 5 weeks now, and I'm down 30 pounds. So I'm, you know, just thrilled. So I thought maybe I'd share this little quick story with you all out there, and you can follow along and see the progress that I'm doing and how I'm doing over the summer. And my goal is by Shaker Woods, which is August, that I'd like to be down to 250, you know, if I can. Hopefully we can get down there. You know, like I said, my lightest a few years ago was 275, so I'd kind of like to break that record. So, you know, I can use all the positive vibes out there, you know, send them my way, all the encouragement and everything else, and I'm hoping that maybe this can be a little bit of an encouragement for you too. And, you know, like I said, let me know if you see any changes. My wife, my family has said they've definitely noticed some change, you know, in my overall appearance and face and everything. And I actually too, I also got my younger brother. He's getting started on the program as well. And so I'm anxious to see how he does. But yeah, let me know what your thoughts are as far as, you know, if you see any changes over the summer. So I just thought this might be kind of fun to kind of, like I said, follow along and see how I do. So that's pretty much the story right there. And I think that's where I'm going to leave things for this episode. Once again, really appreciate you all tuning in and watching. I hope you got a little something out of this episode with me working on the window. And if you did, hey, drop a comment down below. Give this video a thumbs up, share it and everything, because it helps me out with, again, growing the channel. You can check me out, of course, on Pinterest and Instagram. I'm on TikTok, and of course, I'm on Facebook. I'm out there all over the place. My website, of course, is greenfieldwoodworks.com, and I'm always here if you have any questions about getting started into this little rocking horse hobby. And I do get asked quite a bit also about plans. And do I sell the plans? No, these are not my design. These are from the Rocking Horse Shop in England, and they have all of the plans. So if you go into the description under each one of these videos that I put out, you're going to see links in there. And one of the first ones is to the Rocking Horse Shop and where you can get the plans. So definitely take a look at the links underneath this video, and you'll see all kinds of, things there, like my tools, what I use and where to buy them and everything like that. So definitely that's a great resource. And once again, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. So I guess until next episode, I really appreciate you again watching, and we'll see you then. Happy carving. Take care.